part 2, I decided to do one big map instead of one for each day. I left Dawson Creek, headed north, and ended up spending the night in Fort Nelson. I stayed at the Super 8 motel there. And then leaving Fort Nelson, I continued on up to Watson Lake, where I also spent the night. Leaving Watson Lake, I continued on to Whitehorse, which is the capital of the Yukon Territory. Some beautiful country here. Leaving Whitehorse, I went the wrong way and almost went to Haines, Alaska, and then I turned around, headed back up, crossed the border, and I'll show you some video there, and stayed in Tok, Alaska. Leaving Tok, Alaska, I continued on north up to Fairbanks. There's some rough highway here. Between the border and Tok was the worst. It's got a lot of frost heaves. Ended up spending the night. I stayed on the north end of Fairbanks, so it would be easier to head out the next morning. Leaving Fairbanks, it's about 80 miles to the Dalton Highway from Fairbanks. And went on up to Coldfoot, where I stayed. It's 220 miles from Fairbanks to Coldfoot. I've managed to make it on one tank of gas, and stopped there and had lunch and filled up. They only have regular fuel, no premium. And then from Coldfoot to Deadhorse is 242 miles. And yeah, I had to stop and put some gas in my tank right before I got to Prudhoe Bay. This was a cold ride. Got into Prudhoe Bay and spent the night. This is leaving out of Dawson Creek. The weather was great. It was good. This is where the Alaska Highway begins, is in Dawson Creek. Continuing on, about 30 miles outside of Dawson Creek, you see the Peace Bridge. This is the first of several still great bridges. They're not a problem. It's a little awkward when you first hit it because your front wheel kind of wobbles a little bit, but you get used to it real fast. I think there's 5 of these bridges. Still great bridges, and I got video. I think I took videos of all of them and they're kind of back to back. It makes it look like they go one right after the other, but they don't. They're several days apart for some of these bridges. Anyway, great weather. The temperature is about 64 degrees, and it's just nice country. Here's another still great bridge. For some reason, I videotaped every bridge across. I don't know why. I just like bridges. And I wanted you to see that there's a bunch of still great bridges. But this one, I think, is a day or two on down the road. Same with this one. They're probably, I think I crossed maybe 2 in one day. It's the most I did. This is another one. I don't know, I got a bridge fetish. So this is Toad, Alaska. It's Toad River Lodge. And there's an airport across the street, and the airstrip runs right along beside the highway. When a plane comes in, it looks like it's landing on the highway. Anyway, just all they have is regular gas there. I ran into a couple of guys, one from Escondido, California, and the other one from Arizona. I think their names were Jim and T. So we rode together for a little ways when we left Toad Lodge. And this is Muncho Lake, and if you can see out there, it's still frozen. There's still ice on it. It's not frozen solid. It's starting to melt pretty good. But this is some nice riding area. A lot of wildlife in this area too. I'll show the wildlife in part 3. And the national parks in Canada, and then I'll discuss what I learned from this ride, the do's and the don'ts. That'll all be part 3. This is not a still great bridge. I just thought it was a cool looking bridge, so I took video of it. And just a nice area. I did do some drone footage, but it didn't come out. For some reason, I didn't save it right. So wasn't that much of it anyway. And you think you're bad? I saw about 12 of those people, different bicycles, way out in the middle of nowhere, at 100 miles from anywhere. This is Watson Lake. I stayed here, and if you go to Watson Lake, you got to stop and look at the signpost forest. It's kind of a tourist thing, but it's pretty cool. I stopped and walked through and took some video and some pictures. It's probably about, I'd say, an acre and a half, and it's what it says. It's a signpost forest. You walk through there, and people come from all over the world to post signs in there, all through the forest. It was interesting. I stayed at the Bighorn hotel while I was in Watson Lake, and I said I would never stay there again because the room was nice and big, but there's no temperature control for the room. And the lady who sets up in the front office at night was an elderly lady, and she kept the temperature up to about, I swear, 85, 90 degrees. It was so hot, I woke up in a sweat. They don't have any breakfast. The one next door has a restaurant over there on the left. So I thought I'd stay there on the way back. But coming back through, everything was booked. The only room available was at the Bighorn, so I ended up staying there again. Oh, look, another bridge. This is out toward, I'm on my way to Whitehorse here, and I took this bridge because it's going to be gone. They're building a new one next to it. So the Alaska Highway is probably about 95% paved. You do get some long sections of gravel, like right here. And it's pretty loose. If you're driving on gravel and you see a sign that says slow down, there's a reason for it. It means they probably just dumped new gravel, and it's really thick and really loose, and so you got to be careful. This is about probably about 8:45 in the morning. I pulled into Continental Divide, was going to get some gas, and they weren't open yet. These mom and pop places, they don't open before 9 o'clock in the morning. So if you're getting an early start, you have to take that into account. And they didn't have any premium gasoline. So I just went on and continued on with my trip. I had 2 gallons in a bladder, so I wasn't too worried about running out of gas. This is another lake, lots of lakes. This is Whitehorse. Whitehorse is the capital of the Yukon Territory, and it's a pretty good sized city. And if you need something, there's a couple of motorcycle shops. I think a Honda and some other motorcycle shop, just a all-around motorcycle shop. I was going to stay at the Best Western here, but there were so many young homeless people just hanging out on the streets. And the Best Western there didn't have secure parking, so I didn't feel comfortable with it. It didn't matter. They were booked anyway, full. And so I ended up staying. I got a room out by the airport at a hotel there, which was really nice. But I'm starting to see a pattern here. All the hotels are booked up. So if you're going to do this trip, reserve your hotels early because you may end up without one. Leaving Whitehorse, I walked out the next morning. It was 64 degrees. It was nice. But I decided to leave my cold weather gear on, and I'm glad I did because it dropped down into the 30s, and it was cold. It was nice scenery, and I enjoyed the ride. I had my rain gear, so I didn't mind riding in the rain. But this is Haines Junction, and if you see the sign there, it says Anchorage and Fairbanks to the right. Well, I didn't really pay attention, and I kept going straight. And I probably went about halfway to Haines, Alaska, before I realized I was going the wrong way. But you know what? I didn't really mind. There goes another bicyclist. I didn't really mind because the scenery was so friggin' awesome. It was cold. It was freezing. But with my the Harley jacket and pants that I had, kept me really warm. And so it was a nice ride. I turned around went back to Haines Junction, filled up with gas again, and stopped and had breakfast, and continued on my way. So, but it was a nice screw up. I really enjoyed the scenery on this part of the ride. Just beautiful. And I saw my first moose on this part. Anyway, I got back on the right route to Fairbanks, and this is heading up toward, this is Destruction Bay, and it's frozen. So I had to stop and take some pictures of it. Again, it's about 34 degrees. The weather was just friggin' beautiful. The mountains, the lakes, just about everywhere I went. Here it is, pulling up to the Canadian-Alaska border. And this is the Canadian side, so you just drive right through if you're heading into Alaska. You don't have to stop. But from the Canadian side to the American customs, it's about 30 kilometers. And this is where the highway's pretty rough. You get a lot of frost heaves, and you kind of got to be careful and pay attention to the road. This is U.S. Customs. I pulled into here. It was pretty quick. I think I spent maybe 10 minutes there total, and that includes waiting in line. Pulled up, give your guy your passport, and he'll ask you a few questions. Told me to take my sunglasses and my mask off so he could compare me with my passport, and went on. I continued on. The roughest road is between the border and Tok, Alaska. This is Tok. It's pronounced Tok. It's spelled T-O-K, but it's pronounced Tok. I stayed at the RV park here, and they have cabins for rent. And right there on the right, they also have a pressure washer, so you can wash your motorhome, or I wash my motorcycle there. It costs you $5, and you can use all the water that you want for as long as you want. So my bike got a good scrubbing. I stayed here in one of the cabins, which was really nice. See that red pickup ahead with the black trailer? That guy and I have been passing each other back and forth for the last week. I bet we passed each other 30 times. And it got to where we'd always honk and wave at each other. It's like we were family. Anyway, this is my cabin number 7. And it was nice. I stayed in the same cabin on the way back. Leaving Tok, I headed up to Fairbanks. I was finally getting there. And the weather was nice. Still some rough spots in the road. Oh, look, another bridge. Got into Fairbanks, lots of construction. It drove me crazy. It kept steering me the direction I didn't want to go. So I finally figured out where I was, ended up staying in a hotel on the north end so I could get up early the next morning and leave. This is 3 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't sleep, so I got up and left. I was kind of chomping at the bit, excited to get on the Dalton Highway. So I stopped, took the obligatory pictures of the Dalton Highway sign, and took some video, turned around, did a U-turn so I could show myself approaching it. And you go past this this sign, and about a half mile down around this bend, you actually hit the gravel Dalton Highway. And if you'll notice, the gravel here is a fresh dumped gravel, so it's really thick. And they also dumped calcium chloride on it, so it's wet. Not from the rain, but there's a big semi-truck that comes along and dumps that stuff on it to keep the dust down. And then the Dalton Highway is basically 3 types. It's the loose gravel, like you just saw, and the hard-packed dirt gravel, and then pavement. I was surprised at how much of the Dalton Highway was paved. The Dalton Highway is 414 miles. 129 of it is paved highway. The last 60 miles before you get into Deadhorse or Prudhoe Bay is all really nice paved road. But most of it's like this, either loose gravel or hard-packed dirt. The hard-packed dirt ended up being my favorite to drive on. This is the Yukon River and the bridge crossing it. This is a wooden plank bridge, And if you notice, a lot of the planks have big holes in them, so you kind of got to pay attention. I understand it's really slippery when it's wet, but fortunately, when I crossed the Yukon River, it was nice and nice weather. It's about, I'd say it's probably 3/4 of a mile long. It's a long bridge. And then you get off of it and you're right back in the gravel. And you can see the pipeline right there. It parallels the Dalton Highway pretty much the whole way. It looks like they need to dump some calcium chloride here. This is a road sign, 71 miles to Coldfoot and 311 to Prudhoe Bay. I made it all the way into Coldfoot without having to refuel. And you see these soft spots in the road, you got to pay attention to those. Some of them are like 5 feet wide, some of them are 10 or 20 feet wide, but man, they'll grab your front wheel and put you for a spin. This is the Arctic Circle. I approached it and drove right past the road. I realized it, so I turned around and went back. And I'm hoping it's not too far away because I know gas is going to be tight. But you turn on this road and it's maybe not even a half a mile up around the curve here. Maybe closer to a 1/4 mile. So I pulled up there and I stopped and took the obligatory pictures. I don't have any evidence that I was there, but if you look at this picture, you can see my bike was there. Pretty cool. You got to stop and take a picture there if you... Anyway, I didn't see another vehicle on the James Dalton Highway for probably, this is about 160 miles into the highway. And I finally see my first truck, and the dust is so thick I can't pass him. I can't even get close to him. So I followed him probably for about 5 miles, and he finally pulled over. And I don't know if he's just being a nice guy or he had to go somewhere. But I finally got past him. Man, the dust was really thick. And there's those soft spots in the road you got to watch for. This is pulling up to Coldfoot. I thought Coldfoot was right on the Dalton Highway. It's not. There's a turnoff called Coldfoot Road. And you make a right turn on that, and it's probably about a half mile down the road there around the curve. Coldfoot is, there's no premium gas there either. Once you leave Fairbanks, there's no premium gas. So you got to take the octane boost with you if you need premium. But Coldfoot is, it's a camp, and they have a restaurant there and a hotel and the gas pumps. You pull into the gas pumps and you got to walk in to the office, which you'll see on the left there, and give them your credit card and they'll turn the pump on for you. Otherwise, you can't get gas unless you do that first. The hotel's on the right. I did stay there on the way back because I was so tired, but I drove straight through on the way to Prudhoe Bay. They have really good food here. The hotel, I think to spend the night and have dinner, I think I ended up spending $240. And I gotta post a couple of pictures of the hotel. It was really, really bad. It's like a bedroom in a single wide trailer. But they were proud of it. They had just remodeled it and they thought it was really cool. But it wasn't. Anyway, this is heading up the mountains toward Atigun Pass. And Atigun Pass is about, I think it's 4,739 feet, something like that. And it's not that high. And the weather was really nice. You can see there's not a cloud in the sky as I'm heading up to the pass here, gaining elevation. It was 64 degrees. It was nice. And then I see those clouds straight ahead at the apex of the mountain pass. And man, I hit those clouds and everything changed. You can see there's snow on the ground. And it's a gravel road, but it was nice. And I went into the clouds, and within a matter of about, I would say, 2 or 3 miles, the temperature dropped from 64 degrees down to 27 degrees. And it was pretty windy. I stopped a couple of times. It looks like it's going to clear off, and I'm thinking, all right, here comes the sun. But man, those clouds just cover it right back up. And there's a pipeline again. Like I said, it follows it. I stopped to take a picture of all the snow, and if you look at those bushes on the side of the road, they're solid ice. That's how cold it was. It was, I think, 23 degrees with a wind chill factor of 17 degrees. And it was that way the whole time I was in Prudhoe Bay. So pretty cold. They didn't think it was that bad. This is the highway going into Prudhoe Bay. Like I said, it's a really good paved road. But you come in, there's a T intersection. It turns to gravel once you get there. And there's about 2 or 3 gas pumps. If you go left and follow it all the way down, it tees into the airport. And Alaska Airlines flies out of here. So in an emergency or you needed to go or somebody needed to come in, they can always catch a flight on Alaska Airlines to Prudhoe Bay. I rode all the way down here. This is where I filled up down here with fuel. And again, no premium. So you go down here, you use your credit card, and there's some hoses there with some big tanks. And pretty simple. It worked fine. I didn't have a problem filling up. There's the tanks and the blue building. You go in, put your credit card in, and tell them which hose you're going to use. I think there's like 3 or 4 hoses there. You see the blue hoses on the left. That's what you use to fill up. And then there's the airport right across the street. You're going back. The gravel here is pretty thick, so you kind of got to pick yourself a bare spot. And the T intersection's on the right there that we came in on. And if you continue, if you went right when we came in, the Aurora Hotel is down here. This is the hotel I stayed in because it was big. I figured they'd have lots of rooms available. There's about 400 hotel rooms in here, and they were almost full. The only room available was a Jack and Jill room, which I grabbed. But you stay here, it's reasonably priced. You get all the food you want for with your hotel room, and it's really good food. And you'll notice there's a 110-volt plug hanging down at each parking stall. That's because it's so cold. It was cold here. It was about 17-degree wind chill factor, and I didn't take my charger, my trickle charger, and if I had, it wouldn't have been a problem. But I came out the next morning, my battery was frozen and my bike wouldn't start. And so matter of fact, my whole motorcycle was frozen. It was caked in ice. It had rained and froze on it the night before. So I was going to take a picture of the Deadhorse sign, but to tell you the truth, after spending 4 hours trying to get my bike started, I just wanted to leave. And there's no tow service in Prudhoe Bay. You'll see some cars that people drove off the road. If you drive off the road, you're stuck unless you know somebody that can help you. This guy just put a for sale sign on his window, and this guy flipped over. These are all off on the side of the road heading into Prudhoe Bay. Here's the road. When I was going back out, it was frozen. Anyway, that's the end of part 2. Part 3, I'm going to cover wildlife, do's and don'ts, and the national parks in Canada. Thanks for watching.